Live service games, the games that keep on giving and taking. They're designed to keep you playing for months, even years, with regular updates and content drops. But arguably, the real reason they exist is just to keep you paying for months, even years. They're clearly a lucrative business model, so people are playing them, but despite their popularity, it seems like no one likes them. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, let's talk about why everybody hates live service games. So like I said, this isn't exactly a type of game that no one plays. In fact, there are a few of these games that are incredibly beloved. But for every Destiny, there's several Anthems. For every Warframe, there's more than a few Marvel's Avengers. And although live service games can span a vast array of genres, I think most people have the same kinds of problems with them regardless. One of the biggest criticisms I see for live service games is that they're rarely, if ever, a complete experience. And there's a pretty obvious specific reason for this that we'll get to in just a moment. But before I blast you out of the water with a huge duh, let's consider the type of game that we're comparing live service games to inherently every time we talk about why people don't like them. Regular games. Now, I'm not going to say that regular games are perfect, and even a lot of the time, they're going to have a lot of the problems I'm going to talk about over the course of this video, but ultimately, the point of a regular game is to take you on a journey, point A to point B. Ideally, point B is this big, polished spectacle that you feel awesome after, but really the main thing here is that the game eventually ends. There's a certain degree of satisfaction that somebody gets from completing something that you really can't get with something that goes on forever. Case in point, a lot of TV shows that people have fallen off of after they've had one great season and then lots of, other seasons. Sometimes it's like, well, it'd be better if this was a movie because the movie would have to end. Sometimes what started as a great story gets ruined by being endless. And, lots of people have lives, things to do, or maybe just like having more games to play, having a variety of experiences. So, a game that you can A, complete in a reasonable amount of time, and B, complete, period, is often just a lot better. It's harder to get sick of something that ends. It's not impossible, but it's a lot harder. The time commitment involved with a live service game is, put simply, just a lot more. Keeping up with a live service game can feel like a full-time job, and not one you get paid for. In fact, you pay into it, which is the massive duh I was talking about earlier. I didn't want to hit this up front because, frankly, you know this, but I also didn't want to save it for too late because, frankly, you know this. But live service games exist to make money. Really, all games do. But most don't exist to make money on an ongoing basis. Live service games, on the other hand, are monetized in several different ways. I'm going to put them into two main categories, which is expansions and microtransactions. So, arguably, a game that goes on forever is something that sounds like an interesting goal, but really it's just business. These games wouldn't get made if they couldn't make money on an ongoing basis, and therefore they need to go on an ongoing basis. The problem of a game never finishing and the time commitment involved is the problem of the business model. Yes, there are ways to monetize a game that don't significantly impact gameplay or piss people off even. And the first of the two that I mentioned, expansions, I think is more likely to fall into that category. For instance, Destiny expansions are essentially new campaigns. So if you like Destiny, a Destiny expansion definitely isn't bad. That doesn't mean an expansion is automatically a good thing, and one way or another, they add up quickly, often racking up bills for the player that may have already paid $60 for a base game. And then there's the second category of monetization I wanted to hit, which is microtransactions. Oh, microtransactions. The disruptive, exploitative hell that somehow became normal sometime in the last decade or so. Seriously, I don't want to be reminded by a video game that I can buy in-game items or upgrades. I don't want to hear it. I don't like being reminded that the world I'm attempting to lose myself in is a money grab, and I don't like feeling like I'm being taken advantage of after I've already paid for something. Again, a lot of these games have $60 base base game price tags. And that's just the regular microtransactions, never mind loot boxes or some other randomized reward. For people who know these things, they're supremely irritating and signify a game is probably going to require them to play much longer than they intended to in order to grind their way to the point that another $8 can get them in 5 seconds. And then the people who don't know them, don't understand them, aren't familiar with them, may not understand that they might not get anything for their money. The focus of the game is just changed when microtransactions are involved. Like with a regular game, the product itself has to be good. And for a game, that means it's fun and engaging in some way. Oftentimes, these games aren't really designed with that in mind. Instead, exist to kind of find ways to incentivize you to spend money and make you feel good for spending money. And then, of course, there's pay-to-win crap, which I don't even think we need to explain as to why that's bad. The live service business model requires developers who would normally have to think about satisfaction, guiding the player to a point where they feel good and that their purchase of the game was worth it, to creating experiences where satisfaction is just out of reach. Maybe if you pay for this little thing, you'll be satisfied. That might do it. But it doesn't do it because it's not supposed to do it. In fact, a live service game might be the only kind of game where some game director might go to a mission planner and say, I think there's too much catharsis at the end of this. When you beat it, you feel too complete. What can we do to restore players to that empty state where they feel like they need to fill a hole where their heart once was? All of this also creates a situation in which oftentimes the games have an always online requirement. In order to continually update the game and also continually have access to that ever important in-game store, you got to be connected to the internet at all times. And while a lot of people do take it for granted nowadays, not everybody has access to the internet all the time. And if you want to play a game alone, it feels weird that you have to play it online. And if you're having some kind of connectivity issues, you can't play the game. That's dumb. I'll bring it up another time, but these games often have a base price. $60 and you're in. Well, unless you have connectivity issues, then you're not in. And speaking of issues, let's talk about the state these games often launch in. Now, I don't need to tell you that this isn't just a problem with live service games. Many video games have been launching in a terrible state in the last few years, more so than ever before. We live in a world where the day one patch is normal on pretty much everything. It's quaint to imagine a situation in which a game just worked out of the box, metaphorically speaking. Obviously, none of them come in boxes anymore, but we don't even live in a world where the day one patch is good. And then there's live service games. They are much worse. There are live service games that we now consider good that launched in quite a state. Do you remember No Man's Sky at launch? Over-promising, under-delivering, and really just being underwhelming in every possible way. But, I mean, even they had a bit more of an excuse than EA did with Star Wars Battlefront 2. But hey, let's talk Fallout 76 a minute if we want to talk the king of bad launches. Somehow Fallout 76 is still around, and there's actually people that play it and like it, which is shocking because at launch it was probably the most hated game-related thing ever. Not only was the game a buggy mess and just devoid of content, it also had a bunch of real-world merchandise weirdness that I don't know why happened at all. Like, I don't really understand why I was supposed to be excited about, like, a duffel bag for an online game that I hadn't played yet. And then when people played it, they were much more angry. But even with good live service games, often they start out as something with the bones of something that might be good, and if you're lucky, that's what they eventually become. Oftentimes that feels like what they're ultimately selling. The idea that something could become good if enough people buy it. Which, no. Bad game publishers. Bad. And again, I don't just want to sit here and say like every single live service game is bad. There's good ones. World of Warcraft is technically a live service game, and that has been making people happy for nearly 2 decades now. It's not been without its fair share of controversies and problems, but ultimately, it's something people love. And in truth, some people really do just like to stick to one game. It might be that they're working very hard to be good at a specific game, and that's the game they want to play, or it might be some form of comfort food even. They just keep going back to it because it's what they know. There's no judgment for any of that. But those live service games are few and far between, the exception rather than the rule. Ultimately, people hate live service games because there are only a few that are actually really good. The vast majority of them either die a painful death or limp along in purgatory forever. And often they are embarrassing as hell. Like Anthem. Anthem is just the worst thing. It came from a respectable game company, it looked like a cool idea, and it was Anthem. It's just that there's so many examples of terrible live service failures that it's hard to like live service games as a whole. When you hear live service or live service elements, there's a good reason why your heart sinks on a potentially cool sounding game. It's because the priority of that game isn't necessarily being a good, satisfying, immersive experience. Instead, it's closer to a carrot on a stick that you're supposed to follow forever. A hamster wheel of a game. But what do you think? You got a live service game you love or hate? Why not talk about it in the comments? If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter @FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time right here on GameRanx.